everyone. Again, to another episode. Today, inspirational conversations with Matthieu. We're going to cover the full detail of how a person should have an healthy diet and the base of that, eco farming. So, Matthieu is an expert for a very long time on eco farming and all related to healthy food. Matthieu, welcome again. How are you today?
Good, I'm great, Julio. I'm still in the Azores, part of your
Okay.
country, and it's still been an amazing adventure to be here. It's a very healthy environment to be in, as far as I can feel. There's so much waterfalls, nature, the ocean
Yeah.
is always close.
Yeah.
It's quite, it has a big impact on my personal health and the things that are happening for me. Like, I feel this
Sure.
is like a high energy place, and then
Sure. Sure.
when I can elevate my energy, a lot of things happen from there in business and in
I'm
life.
very, very well glad that you like Azores. It's true. I mean, it's very a natural island. You find everything related to nature there, especially a lot of eco, because there's a lot of things going on down there because it's very natural. And yes, I mean it's ecocentric. You know, it's most of the products also come from there to Portugal, the continent. So yeah. So Matthew, tell us a bit about a bit more in detail. How a person should have an healthy diet. And how the products should be made. Because in the end, all the process comes from the raw materials, and of course, if they're not natural enough, the person when they consumed it, so it's not healthy either. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think before to answer that, I want to start off by saying that I grew up on a family farm. My father is a farmer, my brother are farmers. So I know quite a bit about it, and I grew up in that environment. And I'm also an award-winning author of the book 12 Universal Laws of Nature, where I,
Congratulations to that.
thank you, where I really cover like, okay, what if we understand how nature actually works? It's quite complex, but if we can start to understand how nature works, because it's a system. There's a system behind how nature works, and it's been going on for millions and millions of years. So now in humanity, we can try and fight or work against nature, and that's what we've been doing for the past 100, maybe 200 years with the Industrial Revolution. And we talked about that in the other call, which has brought a lot of good things to the world, right?
Yeah,
We're
yeah, yeah.
in a very prosperous world if we look at it from that perspective, but it came with a price, and which was the price is that we are destroying our environment on a global scale. In many ways, there's plastic in the oceans, there's pollution. So now we're aware of that. So it's like, I guess when the industrial revolution started, it was not we were not sure what was going to happen, right? But now we
Sure.
know. Now we have the awareness, so we can start reversing it, and we can create a world that is healthy without having to give away all the other benefits that we have created with the industrial revolution. So it's like this postmodern world that we're getting into, and part of that equation is the health issue, the health crisis that we are facing, especially in well, I think it's global. Like any country in the world is more the biggest problems are related to what we consume and how we consume it, like diabetes, lots of cancers. And it's
Sure.
more, for example, it's more in the US because regulations are less tight, but also in Europe there's lots of issues with health, lots of pollution. So then naturally we're like, okay, let's start living healthy. So what we've kind of opened this discussion to start like, okay, now we're gonna eat healthy. So there's all these people that are claiming these things. Oh, we should be vegan now, or we should be vegetarian, or you should
Yeah,
only
yeah,
eat eggs, or you should only eat meat, or and it's all like it nothing to blame because there's something to say for it. But I think we should even go one step more before we start
yeah,
eating, and before we even decide what we're going to eat, we should decide how are we going to produce that food, because maybe soybeans can be healthy for your person. I personally think that every person is different from like what is your preferences.
yeah.
And as you move through life, it can also change. Maybe you'll have a time in your life where you don't feel like eating meat and you become vegetarian or vegan. And then you move further in life and you think like, oh, I need different kinds of proteins. And then you start eating
I
meat.
think that has a matter with the amount of information that is out there too. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, also. And of course, after that, if the person really knows what's doing, he or she, have a decision to make whatever wants to do, if become vegan or not vegan, so in the end. But of course, there has to be a knowledge of real facts with common sense of
Mhm.
what you're reading. And this goes back to continue the conversation there you were doing.
Yeah, I think that then if we look at that, there's that discussion that I think needs to be had. But the problem is that all people that say you should be vegan, they have equal good arguments, and all people that say you should be a pure meat eater, they also have good arguments. So it's like who's right here? We don't know, and everybody might be right or everybody might be wrong. And because the way I look at it, it's the way it's produced. Like I started to explain about soybeans, for example. You can eat soybeans that are produced on a very monoculturous, highly chemical way, and then that might end up in your soy milk, and then you could question if that soy milk is actually healthy. And then
Yeah.
because the way it's been produced, that's then when people start to say, oh, it's bad for your hormones, or it kills the. They say that soybeans is bad for our testosterone. That's like a
Yeah.
new claim.
Yeah.
So men should not drink soybeans. But it's just that the way that it's been produced with a lot of chemicals, of course, that's going to impact your testosterone. Whereas if you can produce soybeans that are more on a
And of course,
grown in a natural way,
goes back also to the point. If you are affecting your hormones, you are affecting your moods, because if your hormones go down, you have lower thoughts. You feel not so much strength. So I mean, eye hormones is always much healthier in a person. Doesn't matter if it's he or she, to
yeah,
maintain that body level and the mindset and that strength and power, activeness on a daily basis. Yeah, yeah,
totally. And then it's exactly the same with meat production. Like you could say, oh, meat is bad, or there's something about animal friendliness that's definitely a discussion that needs to be had. But again, if that cow that you eat the meat from is only eating industrial produced soybeans, then guess what that quality of that meat will be. Or if you eat
yeah,
chicken that is from a chicken that's indoors all of this life.
yeah,
Same with like I think the biggest issue in animal friendliness is actually pork production. Most of the pigs, they never even see daylight in their life, only to go to the slaughterhouse. So it's pretty much like modern day concentration camps with a very monotonous way that the animals are being fed. So whenever you eat that meat, it's going to be extremely bad for your health because
yeah.
these animals have been under stress their whole life, bad undernourished, like not undernourished, but they only get like a very bad diet, and then that's going to impact you. Whereas if we can actually farm pigs that are, as pigs are actually like wild boars, they want to be in a forest in nature. Like if you can grow pigs that are mostly outdoors, and you can even include them in an ecosystem, or you can create an somewhat. I don't think it's an
So
artificial.
Matthew, I think we came to the question is, if I'm a farmer and you come to me and say you should change the way you're producing, what should I do?
Yes. Yeah, that's a whole other discussion, and that's actually what's happening in Europe, right? We have the Green Deal that I think it was decided probably 3 years ago, and then that Green Deal said, okay, we need to reduce chemicals, we have to make
Yeah,
farming more ecological. So that was like the decision that Europe has made, and it kind of makes sense. But then it was to every government, every local government, which is usually by country, sometimes it's different. Then it's their time to like implement those laws. And I think the Netherlands was one of the first ones to start implementing it. And then it's like saying like the whole farming industry, we've told them for the last 60 years to be monoculturous, heavily specialized, like make it into factory farms so we can produce high amounts of food that exact way that is mostly unhealthy. And then from today to tomorrow, we say, okay, now farmers, you have to like, sorry, we told you to do that, but now you have to like, today you have to change to become ecological farmers. Like,
Would
no,
you think that the legislation was good enough
that,
and with enough information to start the shifting, or
no,
something else should be needed?
no, there's no transition, there's no support. Legislations are far from logical, and
Okay.
they're mostly on like all of Europe. uh, You might correct me, but I think, or I'd love to hear from you if you know, but I think 80% of the European tax money is spent in agriculture.
Right.
So instead of using that mechanism that's already there to make the subsidies to support that transition, it's just a legislative change and they get the same amount of subsidies. So it doesn't really work that way. So I think
What
we
would you
can.
think it should be changed on the legislation currently?
I think that so how farmers get subsidies is based on the amount of land that they have. So let's say, Julio, you're a 5 hectare farmer and you're producing vegetables, and five
Okay.
hectares is enough for you to produce. But then now you have to change the way you farm, and your subsidies might be changed as well. Then it's going to become very difficult because you only get subsidies for those 5 hectares. Whereas then there's farmers that have 100, 200, 1,000 hectares. They will get way more subsidies, but maybe they're not even produced. They're like on a big scale producing. So I think we have to move the subsidy system that is purely based on land size.
On production and land size, right?
Yes, because
Yeah.
that only helps the big scale farmers,
Right.
which they also need support. Like, we don't have to change that necessarily, but we can change the way that farmers get their subsidies. So I've been part of a advisory board that gives advice to the European Commission, and was a group of a group that is really focusing on natural farming, ecological farming.
Mhm.
It's called like agroecology. And so there was a very smart scientist that said, okay, how let's let's reward the farmers by how much biodiversity that they can create on their farm. Because we also know from the science, when a farm is higher in biodiversity, it's going to be more resilient, it's going to be more resistant to climate change. So let's just reward the farmers that are doing it in a better way, and let's make a soft transition. And then it's very simple to have all these scientists that go and make an ecological assessment of your farm, and then they come back next year and they reassess, and they can do tests of like how many insects are on your farm, what is improved, have you reduced your chemical used in your farm, and then your subsidies are impacted by that. So in that way, you're incentivizing the farmers to start doing it more ecologically. And I think we have to give the farmers to do it, or to give them the freedom to do it in the way that they want to do it. Like, even on our own family farm, I saw that my father started to realize that if we can attract these big birds, the predator birds like eagles, and yeah,
Hopes.
hawks, exactly, this
Yeah.
kind of birds, that it helps us because then we have less problems with mouses in the
Right.
field.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So my dad goes out and he puts poles in the fields for a specific bird that's actually very rare in our region, and it breeds in our fields because he also knows that it's going to have a positive impact on the production.
Right. Right.
So, and that's a decision my father made on his own, not even when there's that incentive to get higher subsidies. But that I think it's very difficult to tell farmers what to do exactly, because that's the same with any business. If I come to
I,
your
I
business
was
and I
I
tell
was
you
thinking I
you
was
have to
thinking
do this, you
also.
cannot do that.
Does it have a change? For example, does it have a change on production or impact? For example, from the northern countries to the
Yes,
southern countries because they have more sun, right? So the production is more healthy than the northern countries.
yes.
So how that will be auto evaluated, because then it becomes very complex. How
Mhm.
you auto evaluate, for example, a farmer in the northern country with the same, for example, 100 acres, and you have a farmer in the southern of Europe with the same 100 acres, but of
Yeah.
course he'll produce more. So how that's gonna be, swept in?
Well, yeah, it's a good question because it's true. Like in tropical areas, you can have two, three, four harvests a year.
Yeah.
And then if you do a regenerative transition, it's going to be faster. Whereas in colder climates, you have one crop. So it's a slower transition. But then it also has benefits to other things. Like on our farm, we have some of the richest soils in the world, even if they're very hard to work with. So I think it's up to every, like, okay, we have Europe that gives a direction, like we need to change this, and then it's up to every local well, not municipality but local legislation to interpretate those laws and make it as good as possible for those local farmers. But I think the best way to do it again is to incentivize them to be more ecological without telling them how to do it exactly. We can support them, we can teach them, make sure there's educational platforms so they can make that transition. But end of the day, they need to do it, because otherwise, if you come and say like this is a new law, you have to do it exactly like this, it just doesn't work. It's a weird thing. Like
Yeah,
anybody.
it's like you write a book, you make the idea, you read it, but how do you come that into reality, right? That transition from paper to reality is a big
Hmm.
difference, and most farmer cannot, maybe not even interpret the actual papers into
Yeah,
because it's
that's
not their
another
field.
huge problem. The bureaucracy. Like my
Yeah,
brother, he's more behind his desk than on the field, which is it shouldn't be like that. Especially if you get into more ecological ways of farming, you need to observe a lot,
right.
um, and so we need to make it simpler, way less bureaucracy. Because also it's changing every year. Every 6 months, there's a new law or a new thing, so farmers have to be like on top of
Right.
it. Because if they don't follow the laws that are constantly changing, they get fines and they can lose licenses. So it's like we have to create a framework for
Yeah.
farmers. Okay, this is like your playing field where you can play in, and then you sort it out yourself, like and make it as simple as possible.
I mean, why do you think it is necessary to implement new legislations every 6 months? I mean, it shouldn't, right? I mean, you can make a single legislation with all the laws once and then just send it out to implement it. I mean, I think that becomes more bureaucratic. I mean, why should an organization in government should implement a new legislation every 6 months for something they can do just all in one, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it doesn't make
I
a lot of
agree
sense.
with you. Is that something you're faced with in your work with borderless consulting as well?
It is. It is. Especially when you work with a lot of countries. All countries have different legislations, and it's not transparent. Especially when you work outside Europe, there's a lot of legislation that are not compliant, or even with the European law. So the complexity, for example, if you work with a country in Asia, depending on what you're deploying, for example,
Hmm.
if it's technological, it's not very very complex, but when it becomes human resources, that you physically deploying something physically, it's very complex, because sending a person expat, it's already implementing laws of two countries: the country from the person where he was born or he was living, to
Hmm.
the foreign country, which has sometimes total different regulation and legislation, to make that transparent, to present it, because it's not presented on the foreign country, it's presented on the country that the person is going to travel from. And sometimes the legislation is totally different, has nothing to do with the actual country. So to make it transparent, there's a big, big, big bureaucracy. So sometimes to deploy even 10 people into a foreign country outside the European Union, it can take up to 6 months.
That's what
And
I just saw the interview of Elon Musk that is in the Trump administration, that he wants to clean up the whole thing. and pretty much eradicate bureaucracy,
Yeah.
which kind of makes sense because it does.
He did mention, which I saw. He did show to the latest summit in UAE that was live, because he's making a collaboration in UAE for the new tube, to create the connection between some cities. And he did say, I mean, currently US has over 450 organizations. Does it need really 450 organizations? And they made a good example there. You have like a football field with the players, and you have many referees as all the players. So how are you gonna play the game with so many referees? I mean, you cannot even pass the ball, right? So, and that's how it comes, I mean, you should not overcome anything. I always say in a common sense way, my motto is not 8 or 80. You have to have something in between. You cannot be extreme, having full regulation, but you have to be sometimes flexible, because otherwise you're going to impact business. If companies cannot produce properly or cannot work properly international or even in country, you're not producing. So if you're not producing, the country is not earning, because in the end, they don't pay so much tax as they could. It's what it is. And the main problem worldwide is that the countries having this same problem. I mean, for example, let's put it Spain. Spain, there was a statistic that they had an average of as many governmental officials, from city halls to high government, as US, in a country that has no more than, I think, was 49 million. US has 300 something million, reaching almost 400 million. I think it's 368 million, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure. I think it's something like that. But Spain has 49 million. How can you have same amount of governmental people in a country that does not reach not even a third of a country that has almost 400 million? It's crazy, right? And this happens. This happens when there is bad administration. And what they don't see is that you're sucking the country dry from the companies that are producing. But of course, they cannot produce more because they're sucking dry. There's too many people, taking out of the taxes, and those taxes are not resolved and putting in on infrastructures. They are putting in all for the government organizations, which is like putting the money to the bin. There's no return of investment from the people that pay taxes, especially in Spain, for over 10 years now. And it's been sucking dry because the country does not grow. There's a high rate of unemployment, and the government itself is so big for the amount of population that what they're earning is not even enough for the expenses. It's crazy, right? I mean, how you got to that? So this is the question many people should think. And do they really want that to continue? But this is just an example. I mean, many countries have similar situations. And this is all due to bad management. How can companies produce, for example, Portugal? You have the current legislation in taxes. A company there with high value have to pay between Social Security and all taxes. It's almost 68%. How can you be competitive when you have to pay almost in all expenses 68%? How is it possible? You cannot. You cannot be competitive. So there's countries overrunning now Europe because we are, devaluated because of bad management. And companies have to make a decision saying, I want to go international. So what do I need to do? You move up. So most companies put the headquarters outside EU. They still have branches in the EU, and they function as only a muscle, not the full structure. because it's not possible to sustain, especially a big group, with
No.
such high volume of taxes. I mean, you cannot even be competitive in a market. Doesn't matter what you do, even if you do farming, technology, it doesn't matter. Paying 68% of expenses just for tax, it's not possible to survive. It doesn't matter who you are. So, I mean, they need to think that all that needs to change in order to the country grow. Because if you don't have financial circle in the country, there's no valuation. If there's no valuation, there's no growth. And by that, you're degrading people. There's more unemployment. Companies does not have the enough benefits to sustain themselves. So instead of growing year by year, they just they make a decision of putting headquarters totally out of Europe and just leave the branches to maintain the work they already done from before. And this is a big issue. Yeah? And this goes also for farming, because in the end, if you are a big farmer with high massive production, they're all doing the same.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what's happening now, or a lot of production is moving away in and then we get crazy situations where we import food from all over the world. I think
Yeah,
it's not necessarily bad, because just to give you an example, you want to eat an apple in August, it's better to get it imported from South Africa from a sustainability standpoint than keeping it local. Because if you want to eat an apple in August from that is locally produced, then it has to be in a freezer for about 9 months, and that's very energy intensive.
yeah.
So I think it's good to have a global and a local. Well, produce as much as possible locally, and
I
then
mean,
fill
I
it.
agree in global, but of course, it has to be also fully regulated with the same compliance and the same quality, of course. Because if you're importing a product, doesn't matter what it is, can be food, can be technology, doesn't matter. But it does not have the same regulation that you have in Europe. So why are you importing it? Because it's cheaper? No, you insaturated, more and degraded more instead of making good effort on putting growth.
Yeah,
And this is
exactly.
one of the things that should be looking at.
So is that something that you're also in your work, both with I
Absolutely,
remember in the greenhouse production system and then
absolutely,
the
absolutely.
development?
I mean, it's something that it's much cheaper to put it in Asia, put in production, and then you just import it into Europe. It's yeah, but of course we maintain the same quality level,
Mm.
and this is something that is not fully regulated. There's some regulation, but not for all sectors yet. For example, technology is not like really dangerous, because in the end it does not need, technology is technology. It's not health direct effect. But for example, if you import food, if you import medicines have really good regulation. But for food, it's not the same level as medicine. So that's the problem. Sometimes we import. I see, for example, you go to Spain or Portugal, whatever, and you see some fruits or salads being imported from Latin America. But then you see them and they don't have the same quality as they should. So why are we importing them, and why do not have the same quality check as they should? Right? That's the question. It's not about just importing cheaper, because in the end, if you continue doing the same, nothing changes. Right? I mean, for example, you import beef or fish from, I don't want to mention the country, because I know then it's going to be a controversy, right? With some country somewhere in Asia, or in Africa or whatever, right? So you import it in. They don't have the same regulation or legislation when they come in. Of course, if it's fish, has to be in the freezer in a boat for at least 2 3 months. So what are we doing? We are exactly consuming the same less quality food as we could produce less quality food in country. So what's the point of importing? There's no benefit. And this is one of the subjects already discussed some point around 6 months ago. if we're doing like this, we just continue the same circle as we already having, and we're not progressing and not increasing quality anywhere. So what's the point doing this muscle just because it's cheaper? And it's not big difference in the end, but it's cheaper. But we have exactly the same quality that we could produce here. So why not put, if we're gonna do it like that, why not put it in country? At least you make in local employment, right?
Mm.
So that's that's the big question, because in the end it's not all about money. In the end it's about also, if we're doing the same so don't do it like that. If it's exactly the same, just do it in country. At least you are making some positive impact, creating employment. So you're not creating employment and you're still putting the same raw materials in your country with the same quality as you had before. So why are you doing it like that? And this is the circle that is happening in all countries in Europe, all of them, all. Because I've been in many countries and I materialized the same process. I saw fruits in bad state in a country of Eastern Europe. I saw vegetables in very bad state in the southern of Europe, coming from somewhere in the other side of the lower Americas, and why are we doing it like that? We can
So
just
Julio, let's talk a bit more about the greenhouse project if you want to, because that can have a big impact in that local food production, right?
yeah, of course. The main problem is being that it does have some cost on the beginning, and to materialize that, it takes at least 16 to 18 months. For example, 10,000 square meters, you can get 1 million crops in 1 year, which is quite significant. Doesn't matter what you want to produce, you can produce 1 million crops per year. But of course, you need to wait until the collection to get that the return. So the investment you do, you need to hold it for about 16, 18 months, because it takes some time to build it, then to put the crops, wait for them to grow, and then you get the return of investment once you sell the crops. And that's been the main challenge of the greenhouses. So we've been doing something in Africa and especially in the south, a bit in the south of Africa, and some countries in Asia, because over there the cost of some local materials is cheaper and exactly the same resistance and the same quality. So instead of importing, for example, aluminium or the poles just for the structure, we do it locally because it's the same resistance and it's the same material. So we just send the molds. It's done locally, and it's almost 40% cheaper instead of manufacturing in Europe and ship it there as a puzzle, and you just set it up, right? So in some countries, for us, it's better to just send the molds, the paper molds, the designs. It's manufactured, the main structure in the local country there. And then we just send people there when the molds are ready, to build it up. And then we send, the engineers and all the other people to start the crops and all the manufacturing of the actual raw product. Yeah. So this has been the challenge, and also because there's a big. This podcast definitely is going to be controversial. There's a big monopoly between big companies in the food industry. So they want to continue to maintain the way they do things because they have their own agreements, their own contracts, their own way of doing things. They don't want to change because it's convenient, because they've been working like that for many years. And there's no one from government amplifies them saying you have to change, because it's voluntary, right? There's a legislation, but in the end it's voluntary. There's no obligation. So they just say, no, I'll continue to work because I know him for 20 years and this is the way I do things. So you can present the idea, but it's very hard, especially around Europe, because of the big monopoly of food production, especially the high chains of food production. They have really a big monopoly in this, and they really control. They have. Oh God, this is going to be very yeah. So um, they have really the control, in the end, because they don't want to change. They want to continue doing things the way they do because they get more money from getting industrialized food like this. And the quality itself should be improved, but it does not change. Because, if you look at it, the financial aspect, from yes, you should look at not only the money, because it can take a bit more to produce healthy pig, for example. Maybe pigs, it
Mm.
might take some more time instead of putting industrialized with the way they do to grow it faster. Naturally, it might take some more time to have the animals put it in, right?
Yeah.
And this is the main thing. But because it's more time financially for them, they don't see it profitable. And this is the main objective of the monopoly. We are being imposed for a system that is very, very profitable for some people, and they continue to do it like that unless it's changed by some forced regulation. Because
Mhm.
so far everything is voluntary. There's not really a great effort from the big producers to change the system and the way they do, which they could do, because it's not about changing the whole transformation. I mean, you can have slight transformations and start producing eco or more healthy or organic food, but they just continue to produce it like this. Because this way, instead of sending, just an example, instead of sending 1,000 pigs in 1 month, it's just mere example, please, yeah, because I'm not saying precise numbers. As mere example, instead of sending 1,000, you would send 500. So for them, those 500 is a big number. But like I said, we're not looking at the correct aspect, which is why we're looking only at the numbers right now. You have the numbers, but instead of right now, in the future, in some point in future, not very far, because that return will still come. It just take a bit longer, and you making a big transformation in making people's lives much healthier than it is today. Because if you are doing a massive transformation, putting good healthy food in the market, you are making a big transformation in people's lives, because even the mood and even the way people are acting today will change dramatically. Because if you have the right hormones, if you don't have your immune system low and it becomes very high, your mindset shifts. You have much more positive mindset every day. You
Yes.
feel healthier, you work more because your body is more active. There's many things they missing the aspect. For example, if you feel healthy, if you feel very positive and very energetic, like I am every time, it is what it is. Each person is like it is. I'm very energetic all the time. So
Um,
if everyone is like that, of course you can produce much more, but there's the miss side aspect that not everyone can see. Just imagine this. You have Europe now has 300 million people. Let's say that 70 million, example number, not precise. This is not statistic. Let's say 70 million are retired, or older people. Let's say the active population can be 220. Imagine from those 220, if 180 million, it's working at 100% peak. How would be the massive production of Europe globally instead of how it is now? And this is the perspective that governments are missing out. If they're not putting in something to change the quality of life of the population, they will not have any result. All they're doing is draining the population, promoting more employment, and people will still get a lot of weaknesses because they are consuming bad food and not doing healthy routine. So we are on a vicious circle because of monopoly, and that's the way I put it because there's no other way to explain it. Yeah,
Yeah, I think when we can start incorporating tools that can prove what the quality of the food actually is,
yeah,
because now you go to the grocery store, you can't really tell if it's, even if it's organic, it's in organic farming, you can still use chemicals, or you're not actually growing necessarily healthy food. But I've been waiting for a technology that's already out there that you can go. It would be a scanner that you can add to your smartphone. It would be like just like any camera, you'd have an extra scanner,
okay,
and that can detect the frequency of that food. Because, for example, there's oranges that don't have any vitamin C, and they will be vibrate. That fruit will vibrate at a much lower frequency because it's not been produced in a healthy way. So you go to the supermarket and you take your phone and you can like scan this orange and actually see what's inside. And if it doesn't have any vitamin C, like why would you still bother buying that?
yeah.
So
I think we
the
go
other
back to the
knowledge
previous
that
discussion we
even
had. I mean,
even three
why,
times
why?
the same price, when it's three times the same price,
Yeah, yeah.
I would still buy the one that has the actual vitamin C, because you need one. The other one you need maybe 20, and it's not going to
Or
impact.
for example, buying broccoli that not have any selenium on it. Why do you want to eat broccoli? To eat water? For that, you just drink water from a bottle. And so, you need to have selenium. It's very fundamental for your health,
Hmm.
and most of it's in broccoli. And you will find broccoli in many supermarkets. If you examine some of it, has nothing. It's like only 5% of what it should have. So what are we doing? And this I think is the main problem because of misinformation, sometimes corrosive media, and lack of effort to make that change. Because the amount of time, money, and effort that we are doing in producing something that has practically no result, why don't we spend that time, money, and effort in producing something that has or supposed to be exactly as it is, right?
Yes.
We will go back to that conjecture, yeah?
And there's also a big misconception that we think like there's not enough food in the planet, so we like that's completely wrong as well, because we're
Yeah,
throwing away 30% of the food is thrown away
yeah,
that is being produced. That's the first thing. And then there's no, like, if we would not consider the areas of the world where we have political conflicts or wars, there's no hunger. Like, I
yeah,
might be mistaken, I have to be careful with saying such blunt things, but most countries in the world are not experiencing any hunger, other than areas of conflict. So we have more than enough food. So even if we can produce 20-30% less, and we can reduce the amount of waste and start focusing on producing high quality healthy food,
yeah,
then we can solve a lot of problems. And then we don't need to push farmers to only, currently the food production system is rewarding farmers for kilograms and tonnage, not for what nutrients do they produce.
yeah,
So I'm really hopeful that we will get to a stage where, and that could be part of that subsidy system, that we don't pay farmers for how much kilogram that they're producing, but for how much vitamins, how much
yeah,
magnesium,
yeah,
how much of the nutrients are you producing,
yeah.
and that in that way you get your price for your product.
And,
Because
and I think that can be implemented because, for example, there's carbon credits for CO2 reduction. Why there isn't for food, which is one massive production worldwide. I mean, we have 8 billion people in the planet. Everyone needs to eat. So I would think is number one factor of consumption, right? So why does he not have the same valuation as it is. And
No,
this is,
exactly.
yeah,
And even just to give a small example, that the global wheat production, wheat is one of the one of the staple foods across the world. That they have selected breeds just to have higher weight. And what is actually the thing that makes grains weigh more? It's gluten. So now we have all these grains that are purely bred for like have more kilograms per hectare
sure.
or tonnage per hectare. So they're super high in gluten. And now, of course, we know gluten is not that healthy. But like gluten per se is not unhealthy, but the amount of it is out of balance. So we have all this food that is bred purely on the promise of having higher production, and it's like what you say about it's mostly water or empty calories
Yeah.
that are inside that are not having a
and
good
and
impact.
and, and the human body actually feels the difference. I did an horrible experiment. I'm going to put it public because I did it myself to myself, and it's really horrible because I consumed industrialized food for 2 weeks, and I consumed organic food fully for 2 weeks. I can tell you what are the side effects. You will have extreme headaches with industrialized food. After 1 week of consumption, you start having headaches. You start having pissing problems because of the amount of toxins that the body has. You constantly need to drain out the amount of toxins, so it's a reaction of the human body which makes you pee a lot.
Mm.
You're starting to have the body warm. Let's just say your body usually is between 36 and a half, 37. It comes a bit lower because the amount of calories in consumption are lower. So your body temperature goes down a bit too. You start feeling less strength, less stamina, and less mental health because I was thinking that after 2 weeks the mental concentration became lower than they should. And it was not me. I mean, I was feeling myself that I was fully out of me. That was not me at all. So when I recovered that, after other 2 weeks of healthy food, I recovered myself and I really saw a significant difference. For example, I was sleeping much better, no headaches, much more energy. My body temperature was always the same.
Mm.
I was fully active all the time. Um, I practically only pee and drain, when I drink a lot of liquids. I used to drink a lot of water during the day, but that was
Mm.
it. Not like when I'm not drinking, I still going to pee. And this happened with this industrialized food. Why? Because you see the example. If everyone that sees this episode try to do themselves this, you grab a steak from supermarket, you put it in a pan, and you grab a steak from organic and you put it in a pan, likewise, side by side. You cook it and you see one full of water after 5-10 minutes. It's full of water. It's not even frying, it's boiling. And the organic one is totally dry, and you just need to twist it around to the other side to just finish cooking. So while the other is already practically cooked, the other, you need to put out all the water that it has in, put olive oil again, and put garlic, and put the steak again to fry, and it still comes more water. And in the end, you will not eat it because it becomes like rubber. And this is the reality. So just by that experiment, just for people to think, what is that water? What is the amount of chemicals that meat had? And if you're really thinking in consumption, imagine what it is that is everything besides meat. Because if you put, for example, 100 gram steak, right? How can a 100-gram steak fill your whole pan with water? There's nothing in the meat. Because, I mean, the amount of water is superior to the amount of the actual meat, so there's nothing in there. So when you actually going to cook it after you put the water out for the second time, the actual meat is so dry then you cannot eat it. I mean, you cut it, and I mean, you smash it, and it becomes like rubber. It's not
Yeah, it's
possible, not even
crazy.
to consume.
I
And
agree.
this is one of the experiments I actually did. I did another one with the chicken. I
Mm.
put two pans, and I put industrialized chicken in one and organic chicken in the other pot. I put it in hot water, boiling for the whole hour. Boiling water for 1 hour. After 1 hour, I opened the other pot. There was nothing in there besides the bone. All the meat disappeared. And on the organic chicken, it was fully overcooked because I mean you cannot cook over 1 hour, but it was just overcooked. The whole chicken was still fully there. You could just see that it was overcooked, but there was nothing missing. So it's a significant difference. So imagine. So of course, if you eat a lot of industrialized food and you consumption it, you always have that need of you constantly draining, and you don't have the enough energy that to keep you going. You need to eat more and more, and then it comes to the problem of obesity if you're eating a lot of industrialized food, because you never have the good goods inside you. So for example, if you eat 2 meals or 3 meals of healthy food, it's enough for the whole day. But industrialized food, you need to eat maybe 4 or 5 times, and you'll never have the same elements eating healthy, plus you getting fat because you're eating more and you're still not getting what you need per day. And that becomes radical. It becomes that your immune system goes down. You get sick very, very easily because your immune system is always down. You don't have enough goodies in yourself to protect yourself against whatever. You don't have so much strength. You feel like you
Yeah,
have lack
very
of
logical.
power. Yeah, yeah. And of course, with that come diseases. Because if you do it like that for over 10 years, for sure you have a disease after 10 years. I mean, you're full of chemicals. Like, how can you not have a disease?
Yeah, that's true. It's like also the whole discussion. Okay, it might be more expensive, but
Yeah,
to what extent is it really more expensive? Because
yeah,
in America, the average spend on healthcare is 200,000 per lifetime.
yeah,
So, okay, in Europe it's kind of free, but it's costing the taxpayer a
yeah,
lot of money.
yeah, yeah,
So even in America, 200,000, that's the average.
yeah.
Like many people just die because they can't afford that, and that's the average. So it means that some people are paying in the millions
Yeah.
just to stay alive, which is
And
crazy.
and and that and that's to
That's the
stay
range.
alive. That's the point. Why don't you invest in good healthy food instead of spending all that in treatment and in chemicals that you need to keep yourself alive because of the routine you have? Just think
Yes.
about it.
Yeah, yeah. I have also a connection with a farmer in Canada, close to Toronto, who's like has a wealth of experience about how to grow natural food in a way which is called biodynamic farming. So it's like the holy grail, let's call it, of healthy food production. And he has people that come to his farm with stage 4 cancer, and some of them they say you only have a couple months to live, and they can extend their life way longer, or people are healing from diseases that they never had. And I visited his farm, and he gave me a tomato, and I took it straight from the plant, and I had never eaten a tomato that is so diverse. And it's like you eat it and you just feel
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
health,
Even
the health
even the
benefits.
flavor. When it's organic tomato, you really taste that. Oh, it's like um, a lot of texture. It feels like you're eating some meat. It's not like the usual industrialized tomato. When you eat it, it becomes practically on the first squash. It becomes practically water. But when it's really organic, you eat it and you mush it a lot of times because it feels like you're eating some kind of meat. It's. I mean, even the flavor itself is much more intense.
Mm,
There's nothing to do with it. Yeah,
yeah, true.
absolutely. So, what was from all this and what we already discussed? What will be your opinion in what farmers should look at or how to transform their production and to be totally eco farming?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think first of all they have to sit down and think about what inspires them to work on, and what excites them to be. If they want to work with chicken, then they should do that, and not become a milk farmer. Even if somebody tells me, or someone tells me, oh, your farm is perfect to produce milk and here you can put the cows and that. But they don't want to wake up at 5 in the morning to start milking the cows. And then
Yeah.
that's, I think, a first step. Like, what do you really want to do in your farm business? And I think most farmers of today, they're quite clear about that. But that's maybe for aspiring farmers, because there's a whole new wave of people that have nothing to do with farming that want to start farming. So you have to get really clear about that and really take the time before actually starting to farm, because once you're in it, you can't really go back. So I'm just looking outside. There's a beautiful bird here that I've never seen. It's amazing. So that just caught my eye. And then what I can recommend is you should start just doing some research about regenerative farming. Just go on YouTube, check out some videos, and start to get some knowledge. And then what you should also do is to also get help. Like, there's so many brilliant people that have done it before you, that have a lot of knowledge and experience, and they actually
By the way, you are one of them. You are nominated for the Cannes Award for what we've done. And tell us a bit about that too.
yes. So which well, I'll finish answering the question. So
Sure, sure.
so I think when you can create a community for farmers, also it, I'm looking to build a global community so farmers from all over the world can connect and share the problems they face, because it's somewhat the same around the world. So getting like a community around farming, that's a big goal. Getting the knowledge, looking at other farmers that have done it before you, that you can learn from, and then use that knowledge. And then you should really start to look into, okay, how can I market my product? Because you have to kind of reverse engineer it. Like, where is the market, and is there a way that I can sell my products directly to the consumer, so we can somewhat move out the middleman? Because when you produce high quality food, you have a great story. You can go on Instagram, you can show what you're doing. You don't have anything to hide about chemicals or bad things that you're doing. So then you can leverage social media, TikTok, all those things, and then you can have people to come to your farm, so they buy the products directly from you as much as possible. Because then you can, as a farmer, then you can say, this is my price, and you don't have to go to the world market, so you don't become dependent on the world market. And I'm not saying we have to eradicate that, but when you can produce and set your price and sell it directly to consumers, a whole lot of problems are actually solved from that. And then, yeah, getting help, finding out what works for you. And then there's also a whole new train of things that are happening related to technology, but nature-based technology. So I'm
Yeah.
working with a company that's called On It, and they have a product that's it's kind of like biohacking for plants. It's humic and fulvic and some other ingredients that are sustainably produced, and you spray it on your plants and they grow just way better, and your yields go up like crazy. And then with that, you can never use chemicals, that's the best case, or you can start making that transition to reduce the amount of chemicals you use in your farm. Because I'm not here to tell you like, hey, you have to stop using chemicals from today to tomorrow. That's
Yeah.
not possible. The
Yeah.
whole infrastructure, the machinery on the farm, like, it's not feasible to say like, okay, I'm done now, tomorrow I'll be an ecological farmer.
How much time does usually take to do this transition? Is it like
About
6 months?
three years you
3 years. Okay. Okay.
like and that also comes with, when you do that transition, let's say that you have been farming heavily industrial, heavily chemical, and you start making that transition, your yields are going to drop. That's not, there's evidence is there. Like, when you stop, like it's as if you're a drug addict or your land is a drug addict to all the
Yeah,
chemicals,
yeah, yeah,
and you quit one day or the next, there's some, you need to recover from that. So the yields will drop because the soil is like figuring out, oh, we don't have all these chemicals anymore that we can depend on. Okay, now we have to start rebuilding ourselves.
yeah, yeah,
So there is a drop, but there's also incentives already for, and then that transition has to be planned out very well. So if you can time the transition and do the right things with the right crops, and then again it comes to getting the right to getting the support and using the right technologies that are available and that are very cheap as well. So you can start making your first improvements, and so that you don't run into financial risk, because
right.
the reality is that farmers don't have any margin to make any mistakes.
Yeah,
Like one wrong harvest or one year that goes wrong can destroy their business, can mean bankruptcy. So we have to plan out very well before executing it.
and of course, there's always the weather factor which cannot be controlled. You know, that when
No.
there's a natural disaster, it's true. You
That's
have,
true, but that's also an extra argument to say, okay, let's do
yeah,
that transition now because it's not going to get better. And
yeah,
that's me and my brother. 7 years ago, I told my brother and my father, like, if we continue to do like this, it's either going to be climate change that will make it
yeah,
impossible to keep
yeah,
growing like we're doing it, or it's going to be the legislation, the politics that will tell us now you can't use those chemicals, or financially it will become like so tight
yeah,
with prices that
yeah,
with costs that are going skyrocket, which happened with when the war in Ukraine started. The price of nitrogen went skyrocket.
yeah,
It's like that. Even if you would want to produce chemically, it's no longer viable. And it turned out to be a combination of those three things, and it's like happening exactly now. And luckily, we started making a transition 7 years ago, and we're starting to reap the results from it, because it needs time. You have only one harvest a year, so that's
right.
only 7 harvests. But we're really starting to see the benefits of selling the products directly to the consumers, having a good story with that we can show to the consumers, doing it like really good,
Yeah,
and that's what needs to be done.
and for sure, the consumers will feel the difference between one and the other. I mean,
Yeah.
eating totally organic material. I mean, food. It's something out of extraordinary. I mean, for some people that never tasted it, it will feel like watching Star Trek, right?
No,
It's something
exactly.
like
They've
that.
grown
So,
up with it. And I think
yeah,
then what to add to that is that the hospitality industry, the high-end restaurants, can play a pivotal role in
yeah,
supporting those farmers. Because in our own family farm, that my brother started to produce eggs that are like super high quality. With it's pretty much like a mobile home for chicken, so we can move the stable around across the fields. The chicken go out, they eat insect, eat the grass. They have a high they're high in all kinds of minerals,
yeah,
and they're also high in cholesterol, but the good
yeah.
healthy cholesterol.
Good, yeah, yeah,
And so my brother started out with that, and we had no real market. We were trying out to sell the eggs. The first eggs we had to throw them away because it was like, no, why would I pay double for an egg? Nobody really understood it. Like, what is he doing? And then this guy, his name's Sergio Herman. He's like a 3-star Michelin chef. He picked it up somewhere from somebody, and he came out and visited the farm, and he just started sharing that on his Instagram and saying like, this is the best thing that I ever saw this year about how to produce healthy farm. And he started to use it in his restaurant, and then boom, it like changed the whole business. Now we have too little eggs.
yeah.
There's not enough eggs, even though we expanded it a lot.
Yeah, but I think that the main factor is how to shift the mindset of people, you know, because people need to understand where they want to go, which way. You want to have a healthy life, or you want to continue the life you have. Because if that mindset is not changed, it's much harder
Mhm.
to consume, the organic product, because they're always going to have a slight difference in price, because you take longer to produce them, etc. But like I said, it's not all about money. What you are spending now You are investing in yourself and being healthier for longer time.
Health is the real wealth, because what are you with? Let's say you're chasing money and you make a lot of money. By the time you're
But then
60,
you're sick.
you're a
Oh,
millionaire,
wow.
but you destroyed your health.
Yeah,
5 years later, you're dead. Like what?
yeah,
What was the purpose of making that money if you couldn't enjoy it?
exactly. Exactly. That's exactly that. And that's the way people should think, really. What are they worth? Because in the end, I mean, if you ask a person, how much are you worth? They won't be able to answer. I mean, there's not really a good answer for that. And that's the positive thought that they should have. I said, hold on, I do worth, I do worth. Yeah. So if you do worth, make it worth, right? Instead of doing what you're doing daily, start consuming healthy. So you have a good, healthier life, and you are investing in yourself, living longer and being more active all your life and being more happy. Because it has a dramatic impact when your hormones are always in very high level. I mean, for me, it works like that because I'm always eating healthy. It doesn't matter if I sleep less or I never eat industrial food. So it's a big difference. I always have super active. I don't stop. I'm always doing something, and I never tire. It's a big significant difference, when other people say, "Oh, I feel tired," so come on, man, I feel like running the marathon right now, so I mean, it's a big difference. Even your brain thinks much
Mhm.
higher, and your dopamine gets much higher in your brain because you are using positive instead of toxic dopamine in your brain. So it's about the full circle. You are making yourself more knowledgeable, more healthier, and more active. I mean, if you put all those three combinations in one person, how much that can person produce? You can work 10, 12 hours a day and still not tired. I'm a living proof of that. I've been doing, for example, this past week, I've been doing 15, 16 hours a day and sleeping 2, 3 hours. If you look at my face, does it look like that? No, but this is the reality. Because just for eating healthy, that's the positive result you're going to have.
Mm.
And the last time I had the flu was 5 years ago, just like that. And, for people to think there's a significant difference when you do a full, healthy eating routine. If all you eat is purely healthy, you got a significant result on the outside. Your skin looks better, your nails looks better, even the hairs, which in some point, if you eat a lot of industrialized food, they become like breakable. It feels like you touch them, and it feels like a wire, And when you eat healthy, it's fully soft. I mean, the hairs itself, it's a big difference. I use the hairs as um, as a scanner, right? I touch the hair, and if it's really, really soft, I know my skin is correct. If it's hard, then I know something wrong. So this is myself, right? I mean, this is the way I do things. But you can significantly see, for example, the eyes. I mean, if you eat a lot of healthy food, especially when consuming carrots and all the things like keratin, etc., from sweet potato, organic sweet potato, and all this, you will feel a significant difference even in your eyesight. I mean,
Right.
I can still see 100 meters or 200 meters without glasses. So I mean, does it worth it? Of course it does. So why should I be in a hospital, for example, having eyesight exams or getting ready for another surgery or operation or whatever? And for people who don't know, I'm already 50-year-old. I mean, I'm not exactly. I'm going to be in about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, but 1 month exactly. 1 month and some days. I'll be 50. When you look at me, do I look 50? So this is what I'm getting at. why I look like this, and I'm not trying to make myself over average. What I'm trying to do is the example for people to see that this is possible to do, and everyone can do it. This is what I'm trying to do. Everyone can do this if they eat healthy. You will get these significant results. Believe me, you will have, and you will feel a significant difference. You will feel energy in the morning that you feel like you want to run 10 kilometers and come back and then go to work. And you continue work and you work for 9, 10 hours and you're still going. And you get to the end of the day and you still have energy. While if you're not consuming like that, just by working 8 hours, not doing any exercise because you have no power, you get to the end of the day, you already feel fully tired, you have no strength, no power. So what's the point in living like that? Why are you actually living like that when you can live better, healthier, and happier? Right? Because it's just not about just being here. If you are only on a journey for being in this journey once, why not doing it right? Just do it right. At least you live happier, you live healthier, and you feel that the journey is much smoother. So this is just my analogy.
Nice. I agree.
So tell us a bit about that subject. I mean, you were nominated for the Cannes Festival. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes. So about 1.5 years ago, I was asked to come into a movie about health and wellness, and I took the opportunity because most of the people in the movie are practitioners, like chiropractors, natural healers. And I said, like, this is everything is awesome, this is great, but we also need to talk about what we're putting in our bodies. That's nobody's really talking about that in the health and wellness space. Well, I'm not saying nobody. Everybody's saying that it's obviously a very important part of it.
Yeah.
But it was nobody could come with the angle of saying like, okay, how can we change the way we produce food? What is actually healthy food? Like that whole discussion, pretty much what we covered today. And then also the research that shows like, okay, you can actually produce healthy food in your own garden, and that has a huge impact on your personal health. So that was in the movie, and it got released in November last year. And this week we got the news that it's selected as a semi-finalist for the Cannes International, the film festival. So that's crazy.
Congratulations. Huge congratulations for that. Yeah.
Thank you. I like.
I mean, it was a huge work. I remember that you were filming in several locations for quite some time.
Yeah, we had that farmer that I talked about earlier that is healing people. I interviewed him for that movie, so that's in the movie. And I think that it was at the time when we first met. I was actually in Canada then for filming the movie.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, when is the result? I mean, when the result will come? It's when it's going to be?
Very good question. I don't even know. Like I just got the news from the director, and he's working on that. And the movie, you can already watch it on thecure.com, thecure.documentary.com. I think we can put that in the show notes. And yeah, there you can already watch thecure.documentaryfilm.com.
Okay.
And you can buy your ticket there and watch it immediately. And then we're actually with all the practitioners of the movie, we're working to do a world health summit.
Okay.
So everybody can come and we'll start teaching about the things that
when is going to be that? When is going to be?
The director is or the producers are in the process of doing that. So I'm not sure yet. It's going to be for end of this year, I think.
Okay. That for sure is very interesting.
Yeah, it's great. And I think for me, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, it's nice to see like, okay, this movie got selected, but for me, it's more important that we can spread the message that people can start making the change that is necessary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited. Whatever attention we can bring to this topic, the better, and the closer we are getting to creating a better world. Yeah.
And a future generation at least. Because I mean, if you look at it right now, how does it look? How does it look the future generation as it is now if it's not going to change, right?
No, that's why we do it, right? I have my godchild who is now 4 years old, and I want to be able to tell him when he grows up and has the opportunity to continue farming if he wants to do that, that
Yeah,
we did everything that we could to actually enable that, not
yeah.
being like, oh, yeah, we kind of didn't really try it. Like, oh, we knew about it, but we were too busy with our lives and trying to make money. No, and I
And
think
without
when they
no
will
and
make a lot
without
of money actually if that's your purpose
yeah.
with that transition. There's so much business that business opportunities that are happening related to this health transition and farming transition. Like I see it on our own farm. Like I didn't really talk about that, but that's another huge aspect that farmers are not aware of, that they usually live in environments that are not urban. So people are all in the urban environments. They're so caught up in all that stuff. So if you can change your farm into like a real biodiversity hotspot where you can eat food, you can come together with friends and family and community and really create something unique. That's why also on our family farm we have huge gardens. We
Yeah,
started to produce
yeah.
flowers and I designed the whole thing. So it's really a beautiful visitor center as well. Well, that's a gold mine
Yeah.
because people no longer want physical things. Like even if you're extremely wealthy, the next fancy car or the next fancy watch, that nobody cares anymore. Like the real wealth or health, the real wealth is experiences. How can you create a life full of amazing experiences? Well, a farm can provide that, and that's how farmers can actually become way more profitable as well.
So I think from base, what we can relate from today's episode is don't retract the farmers. Try to help them more and see what you can do. I'm thinking for the government point of view, what you can do to try to change that instead of implementing just things and putting on the table. You need to have organisms to reduce that and materialize all these in paper to put it in reality because farmers are farmers. They're not advocates. They're not politicians. They're not scientific, scientists. They are farmers. So you cannot make legislations or big books and ask them read about it and let me know how you come up with it. Of course, they look at all that amount of paper. It doesn't make any sense. So where are we at?
Right.
I'm not talking in a bad way. We're talking that each of us has his own skills, right? And we need to make this world much more transparent and easier to work with. And like this, it's not transparent because if you continuously, like you said, if you continuously making legislation every 6 months, how do you expect a farmer to keep up with it, by its own, and with the responsibility of maintaining the farm, maintaining the crops, and maintaining the whole production? I mean, it's not achievable.
No, I agree.
So I leave that on the table. If whoever hears this, that has to be a change, and that change has to start there too. Because if that does not change, it's going to be very, very hard for a farmer by itself to change that. You can try, but to materialize it in a real time or dynamic, to make it realistic, it's going to take much longer because it's not about. I mean, for example, you are a mechanic, and I make a legislation, put it in the book, and tell you, okay, you hear the legislation for you to build the whole car according to this regulation. How are you going to build a car if you only know the engine part,
No,
right? This is what I'm getting at. So a farmer knows what he knows. He doesn't know about all this bureaucracy and whatever.
no, it's impossible.
So let's make everything transparent. Let's try to create positive impact and look out for future generations and our grandkids because that's what it's all about, right? I mean,
Yeah,
the grain of sand that we're putting now, it's probably not. I mean, I'm probably not even going to see it. What we're actually starting now, because the actual good results, if we can achieve good results, It's going to take some time until we actually see it. But of course, we need to start somehow. And you need to start in some point. Not like just talk about it. It's like CO2. I mean, the discussion of CO2, I think it has almost 50 years. We all talk about it, but who does things? How are we actually reducing CO2 in the world? What are the mechanisms to reduce CO2? Because I've been seeing for the last 15 years a discussion between everywhere saying, we have an agreement. Yes, but what are we doing with that agreement? We still have 1.5 degrees to decrease for over 15 years. And it's not decreasing, it's increasing every year. Last year only, 22 points in the world reached 55 degrees. Just think it like that. So how is it going to look in 10 years? Are you going to be 60 degrees or 65? Who's going to survive that? And it's not a matter of just the humans. Okay, the humans can still build infrastructure to try to protect themselves, but how are you going to protect the crops or all the nature, all the animals? How are you going to do that? So, I mean, we need to not just talk about it, really implement mechanisms to start functioning and reducing and all work together in reducing. Because if you reduce the fashion sector, they are doing 10% of CO2. So if we materialize that, we're talking about 10% reduction. If we do that in the farming business, we're possibly talking about an extra 14 to 15% reduction because of the amount of chemicals that are creating all this pollution. So if we reduce that, we're already talking about over 24 to 28% reduction. If we are doing that per year, in 3 years we have saved the whole world. So I mean, this is a matter. We just need not to just talk about it. Is implement a mechanism to put it in, and go through it. And that's how it's supposed to be. Because everyone talking about it, everyone putting in the news, there's a climate change, this and that. But what actually is being done? Because I don't see significant changes. I do know people, everywhere. They're trying to do this change, but by themselves, it's not possible. It has to be a global change to make this change.
Well, we only need a handful of people that actually do the change, and then it goes from there. So I think it's happening.
Yeah.
We need to go to the masses. Okay, can we start wrapping up? I need to be.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, what else you want to add in today's conversation?
I think we covered a lot. So when it comes down to the health transition, it's quite interesting that, okay, when we get into health, food production, when we take it seriously and we go to the core of the solutions, we can actually eradicate pretty much all of the world problems. We can reverse climate change with farming and the way we eat. We can change the food production systems. We can create healthier people. We will improve our brain health, so productivity in all business will increase. So it's like once you really get deep into it, it's like a win,
Yeah.
and it goes on and on and on. So I think that farming has that capacity to create that, and because it's the things that we eat, we're doing it every day eating, so we can have a huge and fast shift from changing the way we eat.
Absolutely, and we're contributing to ourselves. That's the main part of it. In the end, it's an investment to each person. I think they should think about that. So, wrapping it up, what will be your power message of today?
Some people say it's not true, but I do believe it's true. So you are what you eat.
Absolutely. I wouldn't say it any better. So with this, we wrap up for today. Thank you all for watching. Catch it up again next Friday. Jake Jensen will join us, me and Matthieu again, and we're going to talk another interesting subject. So catch up. Thank you all for watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio.
Thank you.